So today is June 17th, 2023. It's the anniversary of the disappearance day of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura. Bhaktivinoda Thakura, he's an acharya in our line, and today is the disappearance day of Bhaktivinoda Thakura. Just like other some people who maybe aren't so familiar say, oh, there's Sanatan Goswami, Bhakti Siddhanta, Vyasa Day, and something. Just like, so Bhaktivinoda, he's very prominent for us. Like right now, Anandini just led Jaya Radha Madhava. Who wrote Jaya Radha Madhava? It was Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I use the term wrote for these transcendental songs. I think it's because it's not like write, like, oh, I'm going to write a poem, I'm going to write a book. It's more like he revealed. He revealed Jaya Radha Madhava. The evening song, Jayo Jaya Gaura Chande Avati Keshob, it's Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay. Om Jnanatimmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamrupa Kadamayam Darati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatayubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanan Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine, Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gravani Pacharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Again, today is the anniversary of the disappearance day of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Srila Bhaktivinoda's pranati or pranam mantra. Namo Bhaktivinodaya Satchidananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate. I offer my respectful obeisances unto such Chidananda Bhaktivinod, who is transcendental energy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is a strict follower of the Goswamis headed by Srila Rupa Goswami. Hare Krishna. So today's a special day to enhance our remembrance and relationship with Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And there are so many ways to do that. We could certainly do a month-long seminar on Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And there are so many special things about his life and teachings. Just like, okay, so I'm sitting in my home here. You know, we host these home programs, okay? And many of you have hosted home programs where we discuss Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and Kirtan and Prasadam. So home bhakti yoga programs. As soon as we take it for granted, oh, home program. Well, really, that's Bhaktivinoda Thakur. That's Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Not that it didn't exist before him. Like in Lord Chaitanya's time, they would have home programs at the home of Srivas Thakur, like that, and Advaitacharya. But it was quite dormant. So he started a whole movement called the Nam Hat movement, which is essentially like, there's nothing, this movement of Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, yeah, temples, big temples or small temples, and practice Krishna consciousness in your home. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he rejuvenated a whole movement called Nam. Hat means marketplace. Nam is the holy name. And he would like, yeah, have home programs. And even like with about 10, 15 people. And then if it gets like bigger than your home, then someone else, you start your home programs. And just like these pockets of home programs to spread Krishna consciousness around the world. So that this whole movement of home programs, that's inspired by like the inspiration and the hard work of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda, so just, yeah, so we want to, just like we know, we can probably talk about so many people in different spheres of life, politics, sports, entertainment, maybe our favorite intellectual, this and that. So for our purification of heart back to Godhead program, like let's absorb ourselves in the past times. Let's get to know the teachings and the life of these great personalities. And today's a special day to get to know more fully and to absorb and to be inspired by even more fully Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Of course, we know the previous acharyas, we understand the previous great teachers, great pure devotees through our current link to the Parampara, Srila Prabhupada. And it's kind of like the irony is just like, let's say if I say, I want a direct relationship between my eyes and this print. I want a direct relationship. I can't read a word. It's all blurry. So that's a fact. I say, okay. So I'll put my glasses on, and then, I offer my respect. Very clear. Now, in a sense, these glasses, they are in the way between my eyes and the print. In a sense, they are. And those glasses enhance my direct relationship with the print on the page. Right? Yeah. So we realize, we understand Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Gaura Das Babaji, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Rupa Goswami, Lord Chaitanya, Srimati Radharani. We realize them, we understand them through the glasses of Srila Prabhupada. Okay? So it's like, in one sense, it's in the way, but actually it enhances our direct relationship. And today's a special day to enhance our direct relationship through Srila Prabhupada with Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This morning, before Japa, we had a somewhat extended reading from a lecture from Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada, well, there's just so many major highlights of the life and teachings of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So we read a pastime of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And this was a major accomplishment of his, where he, it's described in the Veda, Shruti Smriti Puranani Pancharatra Vidim Vida, Kantiki Harer Bhaktir Utpataya Eva Kalpate, that spiritual life, even bhakti, even Krishna consciousness, that's not according to the authorized Shruti, Smriti, and Puranas, that's not according to an authorized line of disciplic succession, even if it looks like bhakti, it's a disturbance. It's a disturbance. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, by his actions and by his books and bhajans, he's a prolific writer, that's an understatement, he made distinctions, he differentiated. Here's the genuine article from here's cheating, and deception in the name of bhakti. And there was and still is a lot of cheating and deception in the name of Krishna consciousness. And so Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, followed by his son and the next Acharya, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada, they give us the tools spiritually, intellectually, to make the distinctions. And so we read a pastime this morning where there was someone, kind of a mystic yogi in the name, who was claiming he was Vishnu, he was Krishna, and many of the villagers were believing him, and they were sending their wives and daughters to dance with him in the forest, like Krishna's Rasa Leela, and all sorts of decadent, degraded things going on in the name of Krishna consciousness. Yeah, and so Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he put an end to it. He put an end in a very bold, courageous, dramatic way. And so Prabhupada speaks about that pastime very much. And so that's yeah. Also, okay, that Kipa Vipa Kibinyase Sudra Keninaya Ye Krishna Tattva Veda Se Gurahaya. So that's a verse from Sri Chaitanya that says, like, whoever you are, whatever you do, whatever one's position in society, whatever type of body you're in, you're wealthy class, poor class, woman, male, female, whatever you're a farmer, a lawyer, whatever, just learn the science of Krishna and share it. And then your life is perfect. Yare Deka Taika Krishna Padesh Amara Agyai Guru Hanataya Edesh. Just follow Krishna, repeat the words of Krishna. So that bhakti is not dependent on anything material. So we can see that, we can realize that if we look at our line of teachers. So for example, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, he was what's called a Naishtiki Brahmachari. He never had any connection with women, never had any connection. I mean, he would have women disciples like that, but never any like intimate sexual romantic connection. So he was a celibate, pure bhakti yogi for his whole life like that. Okay. So you can say, oh, that's what pure Krishna consciousness looks like. Well, Bhaktisiddhanta's, his biological father is Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who we're celebrating today. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had 13 children. Just to make some distinction here, okay? Just to make some distinction. It's like, oh yeah, so Bhakti Yoga means like, yeah, you're not like, but he not only had 13 children, he was the chief magistrate. He was basically like, he was like the mayor, the governor of Jagannath Puri. He was the director of the temple. He was a judge in the British Raj. So he's dealing with law cases. So he was very much in the world. Okay. So we get all sorts of varieties if we look at our parampara, right? And so it's not like, oh, here's what pure bhakti. No, it looks like this. No, it looks like you have a lot of children. No, so depending on our purpose, depending on our service to Srila Prabhupada's movement, to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's movement, then we might manifest a more in the world, or a more kind of like in the temple type of service. But bhakti's not dependent on anything. Actually, I'll read an excerpt here, and so okay. And this relates to some of what we spoke about here. So this is just a brief excerpt from Conversations with Srila Prabhupada, Volume 26, August 16, 1976 in Bombay. And so Dr. Patel, Prabhupada and Dr. Patel in Bombay, they had lots of talks, often arguments. They really had a lot of affection for each other, but they were kind of about the same age. And even Prabhupada's students and disciples, they would sometimes get angry at Dr. Patel. How can you speak with Prabhupada? He said, no. Prabhupada was enjoying the rasa. And so they had a lot of affection for each other. So Dr. Patel said, because, sir, in the name of Veda, people were misbehaving. Prabhupada says, Vedas, when Lord Buddha wanted to stop animal killing, these rascals came with Vedas. Vedas, there is sacrifice, there is animal killing. So he thought that these rascals will create botheration. By bringing Vedas, there is, he said, I don't care for it. Veda na mania bodha hayata nastika Veda shraya nastikya vada bodhake adika. Similarly, these rascals are giving evidence of Rupa Goswami's advice that here is Radha Kund, but whether you have followed other things. So Prabhupada goes on and he says, yes, Vacho vegam manasa kroda vegam pritim sasisha etan vegan yovisha. You are manipulated by the udara vegam, upasta vegam. So Prabhupada's referring there. There's a text in Rupa Goswami's Sri Upadesham Rita. Vacho vegam manasa kroda vegam jiva vegam udara pasta vegam etan vegan yovisha heta dira sarvam apimam pritivim sasisha. So basically, it says spiritual life begins with consciously controlling 6 urges. The first 3 are in a line, tongue, belly, and genitals. And they're connected. Right? So tongue, belly, genitals, the force of tongue, belly, and the force of anger, the force of mind, and the force of the tongue. So their tongue has 2 forces, one to taste, and the other to speak, to speak nonsense and gossip and like that. So we control those 6 urges. Then we're potent to be a touchstone for spiritual transformation, to be a guru in the essential sense. So Prabhupada goes on. You are manipulated by the udara vegam, upasta vegam. First, I'll just do a kitchen check. Malini, are you hearing? Yeah. Good. First, there is test. Etan veganyo veshaheta dira. Then for him, a radakund. Diras tatra namuyati. Right? So Prabhupada's quoting the last pada of that well-known verse from Bhagavad Gita. Diras tatra dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovinam jaratata dehantara praptir. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. The self-realized sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Dirastatra namuyati. He has got 3 dozen sevadasi and living in Radhakund. He's got 3 dozen girlfriends and he's living in Radhakund because he's a babe. Radhakund is actually the holiest spot in the universe. So Prabhupada's talking about the hypocrisy in the name of bhakti. My Guru Maharaj wanted to publish Govinda Lilamrita. He asked permission of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So first of all, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, I'll tell you someday. And when my Guru Maharaj reminded, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, yes, you can print 1 copy. If you are so much anxious to print it, print 1 copy. You will read and you will see that you are printed, not for distribution. So we are printing all these books for understanding properly. Not that here is Radhakund, let us go, jump over like monkey. Here is Rasa Leela immediately. Okay. So Prabhupada's talking about, there are very esoteric Vaishnava literatures that are authorized. And they talk about like the pastimes between Radha and Krishna. But again, if we go there in an unauthorized way, then it just becomes like going to these esoteric pastimes that are transcendental pastimes between Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his most loving devotees. but then we mistake them, and we mistake them for our own lusty desires, and then our spiritual life is ruined. So if we read Prabhupada's books, we get all those esoteric pastimes in a safe way because we're looking through the glasses. We're protected, right? Some of you, oh, Prabhupada didn't give everything. That means you haven't read Prabhupada. You haven't read his book. So read Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada gave us the three most essential literatures. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, which culminates in the Summum Bonum, Krishna book, 10th canto, Chaitanya Charitamrita. These are the most essential. Right? So Prabhupada knows what. And this whole so you might, we can say that our tradition is it's rigorously philosophical and intellectual. Right? We got the greatest literary giants in this tradition, and simultaneously it's relentlessly devotional and heartfelt. So integrated, heart and head and spirit. Okay, because and Bhaktivinoda Thakur established that. I mean, Krishna established it with Bhagavad Gita, but it became, Lord Chaitanya rejuvenated it, but then it became dormant, and Bhakti was seen wrongly because of so much nonsense and cheating in the name of Krishna consciousness. Bhakti was seen as sentimental, degraded, can't give it in suit. But in Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in 1896, he published the life and precepts of Lord Chaitanya. And my understanding is he sent it around the world, including to McGill University in Montreal. Mother Melanie has some of your early history in Krishna consciousness in Montreal. And some of Prabhupada's early thought, but one of the first centers Prabhupada opened was in Montreal, and when some of his followers found that. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur, back when India was subjugated, he said, the British and the Russians and the Americans and the Europeans and the French. Why are you saying that?
Oh, it's amazing.
Amazing, yeah. He was saying that they're all going to come together and chant Jai Sachinanda. Jai Sachinanda is the name of Lord Chaitanya. They're all going to come together and chant Jai Sachinanda and Jai Sachinanda, and they're going to absorb themselves in Srimad Bhagavatam. So that would seem like the predictions of a crazy person back then in the 1880s. But he said, no, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and even Prabhupada will make a point of this, that the year that Bhaktivinoda Thakur published in English, he published in many languages, including English. The year that Bhaktivinoda Thakur published Life and Precepts of Lord Chaitanya and sent it to McGill University and other places in the West is the same year that Prabhupada took birth. So Prabhupada, he makes a point of that. That's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Namhat tradition, his literary tradition, his example as an ideal householder and father and husband, and there's just so many aspects of his life that we could just do a full week on each aspect. So this morning we read something from Srila Prabhupada about Srila Bhaktivinoda. I thought maybe we'll read a little bit directly from, we might do a few things here, but we might hear maybe a little bit directly from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So, okay. So here's something. This is from, okay. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is giving a report. He would produce newsletters, a report on Namhat. Okay. Again, hot. Okay, I'll read it. This is Bhaktivinoda Thakur directly writing. Some of what we read might be translated from Hindi or Bengali, Sanskrit, but he also wrote directly in English, and maybe we'll read some of that too. Yeah, in fact, he has a very long thing called the Bhagavat. It's philosophy, ethics, and theology. and it's amazing. So that he wrote that and spoke it directly in English, an amazing lecture. So here, Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, on Saturday afternoon, the 26th of Asad, 1892, a Namhat festival was hosted by Shriyuta Ray Yatindranath Chaudhuri Mahashai of Barahnagar. Many learned and inquisitive gentlemen were in attendance. At the request of the organizers of the Namhat, everyone took turns singing. Afterwards, the sweeper of the market, who is the sweeper of the market? It's actually, he's referring to himself, Bhaktivinoda.
Oh, himself. Okay.
Yeah, see, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur, extensive writings, and which he put into action. He describes a whole extensive community, a marketplace, and you have the sellers in the marketplace, and those who are constructing the booths, and those who are exchanging the money. So, and everyone has a position in the marketplace to exchange. And then he says, now, his name from birth was Kedranath Dat. He said, Kedranath Dat's place, his service in the marketplace is, I am the sweeper. I'm keeping it clean. Keeping it clean. So very humble, and arguably the most important thing, because otherwise, again, not just in Bhaktivinoda's time.
You used to be a sweeper.
What's that?
You used to be a sweeper.
I was. I've done sweeping. Yes.
Or garbage cleaning.
Yes, so many things. So very, very humble position. But not just in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's time, but here in 2023, there's a lot of contamination going on in the name of Krishna consciousness. If we don't learn from history, we'll repeat it. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he said, well, my service is simply to sweep and keep things clean, to make sure that the exchanges of love of Godhead, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sajika Panoy Shravanani Shuddha Chitika, the exchanges of love of God, the exchanges of the philosophy, the standards for prasadam, the standards for kirtan, the philosophy is as it is. It's coming down potent and pure from Krishna through Lord Chaitanya to the six Goswamis, with no Mayavad contamination, no Sahajiya contamination, no adulteration in the name of bhakti, which was prevalent then and prevalent now. So he's referring to himself as the street sweeper. It's a wonderful service. Afterwards, the sweeper of the market, Shriyuta Kedranath Bhaktivinoda, gave a long discourse entitled Mahashai Sri Krishna and Sri Krishna Chaitanya that lasted over 3 hours. Afterwards, the Mahajani Shriyuta Advaita Das Babaji Mahasai sang 2 songs, ending with Haribol. At the conclusion, all the assembled guests gave a great cry of Hari, and the meeting ended. So it says a little written report of a program.
And he spoke at that program?
He spoke for 3 hours. It lasted over 3 hours. Okay.
And kirtan.
And kirtan, yeah, right, yes. Okay, I'll just say, let's see here. So since I mentioned he had 13 children. So in this picture, we got a whole bunch of them. There's also some, he's elderly here. So they've got some grandchildren here. Bhakti Siddhanta's here. Bhakti Siddhanta's here with hair and a mustache. And I'm sure there's some grandchildren in this picture too. Just so you get a feel, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's grandfather age here.
So Bhaktivinoda was his son?
Bhakti Siddhanta was his bio. That's correct.
Was his son?
That's right. Yep.
The third one?
That sounds correct, but I think so. Yeah, but we can read. That's easy to research. Yes. Okay. So, let's see. Then, this is from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I'll read a bit. In Puri, Jagannath Puri, I made a lot of devotional advancement. I was becoming detached from worldly life, and I no longer believed that material progress produced anything of lasting value. It's like a straightforward statement, but it really gets to the essence. Gets to the essence of initiation. The essence of initiation. Just like I'm just finished with material progress. Like I'm just no, I'm just not interested anymore. It doesn't mean that I won't fulfill my so-called material responsibilities, but even that I'll fulfill them with a view to making progress in Krishna consciousness. Just material progress for the sake of it, finished, like that. So Bhaktivinoda Thakura, we probably won't get into it today, but his life is quite a life of transformation. He was born in a village, extensive animal killing, and like that. But even he had a grandfather who was like a Vaishnava mystic and like that. But and in his young days, there's lots of writings here. His young days, he was British educated, 1800s, and he was like a sophisticated young intellectual. And he spoke harshly against the Bhagavatam. He spoke harshly,
and against the Vaishnavas.
And against the Vaishnavas, because most of what he saw was sentimental and like that. And that's what makes, like, later when he speaks on the Bhagavatam, that he gives his personal experience and he says, yes, I was a fool and rascal, and this is, and his transformation is he somehow got a copy of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which wasn't easy. Why not just go online? It wasn't so easy.
Which is a start.
Yeah. So then he speaks on Bhagavatam, and basically because Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we're in North Florida studying Bhagavatam every morning. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, in Puri I made a lot of devotional advancement. I was becoming detached from worldly life, and I no longer believed that material progress produced anything of lasting value. I spent my time in great happiness, seeing the festivals, acquiring knowledge, and cultivating devotion. There is no doubt that Sri Purushottama Kshetra Puri is directly Vaikuntha, Vishnu's heaven itself. At this time I gave up all karmakanda practices and depended solely on Vaishnav Prasad. Hare Krishna. Okay. Prasad, yeah.
Prasad from the Vaishnav.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just reading another excerpt from Bhaktivinoda's extensive writings. I'm thinking, I know we got like another 6 hours of program, including Kirtan and Prasad. So later, maybe around 11, we'll read, maybe sing some of Bhaktivinoda's bhajans, his songs. We mentioned Jaya Radha Madhavas from Bhaktivinoda. So this is from the Bhagavat, its Philosophy, Ethics, and Theology by Bhaktivinoda Thakur Kedranatha. So Bhaktivinoda writes, the Bhagavat does not allow its followers to ask anything from God except eternal love towards him. Because, it's a conception, oh God, please give me my daily bread, which, we're approaching God, so that's spiritual, it's good. But more pure is just like, what can I do for you? I just want love for you, and I just want, how can I serve you? So this is like very pure. The Bhagavat, that means the Bhagavatam, does not allow its followers to ask anything from God except eternal love towards him. The kingdom of the world, the beauties of the local heavens, and the sovereignty over the material world are never the subjects of Vaishnav prayer. The Vaishnav meekly and humbly says, Father, Master, God, friend, and husband of my soul, I have called you God. Let my soul be wrapped up in admiration at your greatness. I have addressed you as my master. Let my soul be strongly devoted to your service. I have called you my friend. Let my soul be in reverential love towards you and not in dread or fear. I have called you my husband. Let my spiritual nature be in eternal union with you, forever loving and never dreading or feeling disgust. Father, let me have strength enough to go up to you as the consort of my soul, so that we may be one in eternal love. So here, this is Krishna consciousness oneness. It's not oneness about losing my identity. It's keeping our identity, and oneness in desire, that my desire is the same as Krishna's. And then we're eternally individuals. Natveva ham jatuna sam natvam name janadipa nachevana bhavishyama sabevayama tatpara. That we're eternally individuals, and oneness is that our unavoidable propensity for desire is dovetailed, is aligned with Prabhupada's desire. That's Vaishnava oneness, not losing our identity. Okay, so maybe we'll read a little bit more, then I'm glad to open it up to questions and comments and sharing. So this is Hare Krishna. So I mentioned this. So this is the Bhagavat, its philosophy, ethics, and theology. So this is a text. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave a famous speech at Dinajpur. I don't know geography, but I think it's probably what we would call East Bengal, what's now Bangladesh. Bangladesh formed probably in the 70s. George Harrison did a three album set about Bangladesh. So I'm assuming Bhaktivinoda Thakur spent a lot of time in East Bengal. And this speech, it's one of the few, the editor says, one of the few excellent examples of English writing that came from the pen of Bhaktivinoda. So just a brief excerpt. O ye who are deeply merged in the knowledge of the love of God and also in deep thought about it, constantly drink, even after your emancipation, the most tasteful juice of the Srimad Bhagavatam, come on earth through Sri Shukadev Goswami's mouth, carrying the liquid nectar out of the fallen and as such very ripe fruit of the Vedic tree, which supplies all with their desired objects. That's actually Bhaktivinoda Thakur's English translation of the third verse of Bhagavatam. Nigama kapatu tarora galitam palam sukhamukaram ritadravi savyatam pipata bhagavatam rasamalayam mahor sikabhuvi babuka. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Srila Shukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even tastier, although it's already relishable for all, including liberated souls. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it's a writing and it's a speech. This is about 20 pages. We'll maybe just read a few paragraphs. It's very powerful. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, we love to read a book which we never read before. We are anxious to gather whatever information is contained in it, and with such acquirement, our curiosity stops. This mode of study prevails amongst a great number of readers, who are great men in their own estimation, as well as in the estimation of those who are of their own stamp. In fact, most readers are mere repositories of facts and statements made by other people. But this is not study. The student is to read the facts with a view to create, and not with the object of fruitless retention. Okay, so we a lot in our personal growth and in our talks, we use a lot open-minded, childlike spirit of wonder and discovery. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's saying whatever you read, even if you're reading spiritual literature, be in that creative spirit of discovery, not just memorizing facts, right? So that's what he's saying. Students, like satellites, should reflect whatever light they receive from authors and not imprison the facts and thoughts, just as the magistrates imprison the convicts in the jail. So really like open-mindedness to arrive at deeper and deeper realization of Siddhanta, truth.
Not controlling knowledge.
What's that?
Not controlling knowledge.
Not controlling knowledge. So he says, thought is progressive. It's a Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's like a quintessential Bhaktivinoda Thakur soundbite. Thought is progressive. The author's thought must have progress in the reader in the shape of correction or development. He is the best critic who can show the further development of an old thought, but a mere denouncer is the enemy of progress and consequently of nature. I'll just read a few excerpts here. The true critic, on the other hand, advises us to preserve what we have already obtained and to adjust our race from that point where we have arrived in the heat of our progress. He will never advise us to go back to the point whence we started, as he fully knows that in that case there will be a fruitless loss of our valuable time and labor. The Bhagavatam, like all religious works and philosophical performances and writings of great men, has suffered from the imprudent conduct of useless readers and stupid critics. I'll read that sentence again. It's so much fun. The Bhagavatam, like all religious works and philosophical performances and writings of great men, has suffered from the imprudent conduct of useless readers and stupid critics. The former have done so much injury to the work that they have surpassed the latter in their evil consequence. Okay, so he's saying that the useless readers have done more harm than the stupid critics. Like the useless readers getting like those who are so-called following the Bhagavatam, as opposed to the stupid critics. He's kind of referring to the type of critic he was in his early life. It's pastime, meaning he's always a pure devotee, but he went through a particular pastime for our benefit. So that's like the stupid critics. But the useless readers may be like, oh, I'll just read about the Rasa Leela in the 10th canto without reading about Krishna as the source of all existence, the first 9 cantos, and just complete misconceptions. Men of brilliant thought have passed by the work in quest of truth and philosophy, but the prejudice which they imbibed from its useless readers and their conduct, so he's referring to the sort of conduct we read about this morning, very decadent conduct in the name of Bhagavatam. And he's saying like this is the worst harm, worse than the critics who rejected out of their intellectualism and they really don't understand anything. Its useless readers and their conduct prevented them from making a candid investigation, not to say of other people. The great genius of Raj Ramohan Roy, the founder of the sect of Brahmoism, did not think it worth his while to study this ornament of the religious library. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was a follower of Raj Ramohan Roy, just like Prabhupada was a follower of Gandhi at some point, and that sort of pastime. Brahmoism, it was like the young Bengalis especially, who got educated and they were intellectual and they would accept maybe an impersonal type of spiritual life and they would reject the stories of the Bhagavatam. So that's what and he's saying like this Raj Ramohan Roy, very similar, like, yeah, sometimes Prabhupada would appreciate Gandhi and also show his limitations. That Raj Ramohan Roy, he wouldn't even give time to the Bhagavatam because there was such pretension and decadence and degradation in its name that he said, oh, this must be a worthless literature. He did not think it worth his while to study this ornament of the religious library. He crossed the gate of the Vedanta as set up by the Mayavad construction of the designing Shankaracharya, the chosen enemy of the Jains, and chalked his way out to the Unitarian form of the Christian faith, converted into an Indian appearance. Okay, so this Brahmoism is like the Unitarian Universalist, an Indian form. Okay, yeah, very brilliant. Ramohan Roy was an able man. He could not be satisfied with the theory of illusion contained in the Mayavad philosophy of Shankar. His heart was full of love to nature. He saw through the eye of his mind that he could not believe in his identity with God. He ran furious from the bounds of Shankar to those of the Quran. There even he was not satisfied. He then studied the preeminently beautiful precepts and history of Jesus, first in the English translation and at last in the original Greek, and took shelter under the holy banners of the Jewish reformer. Bhaktivinoda is referring to Jesus as the Jewish reformer. Okay, beautiful. All right, the Jewish reformer. But Ramohun Roy was also a patriot. He wanted to reform his country in the same way as he reformed himself. Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues. The Bhagavat has suffered alike from shallow critics, both Indian and outlandish. That book has been accursed and denounced by a great number of our young countrymen who have scarcely read its contents and pondered over the philosophy on which it is founded. It is owing mostly to their imbibing an unfounded prejudice against it when they were in school. The Bhagavat, as a matter of course, has been held in derision by those teachers who are generally of an inferior mind and intellect. This prejudice is not easily shaken when the student grows up unless he candidly studies the book and ruminates on the doctrines of Vaishnavism. We are ourselves witness to the fact, when we were in college reading the philosophical works of the West and exchanging thoughts with the thinkers of the day, we had a real hatred towards the Bhagavat. Strong words. We had a real hatred towards the Bhagavatam. Bhaktivinoda saying, that great work looked like a repository of wicked and stupid ideas, scarcely adapted to the 19th century, and we hated to hear any arguments in its favor. With us then, a volume of Channing, Parker, Emerson, or Newman had more weight than the whole lot of Vaishnava works. Okay. So he's talking about the kind of the progressive American and European thinkers of English of the day. Actually, when Bhaktivinoda Thakur sent Life and Precepts, when he sent one of his books, but not one of his English books, he sent a copy to Ralph Waldo Emerson. And Emerson responded. It's in here. Ralph Waldo Emerson responded. Emerson and Thoreau, they're known as, and others, they're known as the American Transcendentalists, the Boston Brahmins. Right. Yeah. So Emerson responded, a very polite response, said, thank you for this. He said, I'm not able to read the language, but thank you for sending it to me. So he had, Bhaktivinoda had correspondence with Ralph Waldo Emerson. So with us then, a volume of Channing, Parker, Emerson, or Newman had more weight than the whole lot of Vaishnava works. Greedily we pored over the various commentaries of the Holy Bible and of the labors of the Tattva Bodhini Sabha, containing extracts from the Upanishads and the Vedanta, but no work of the Vaishnavas had any favor with us. So he's saying like a Western philosophy, yes. Christian, yeah, or even the Christian, the Bible, because that was the education he was getting. Like this is a true religion, or even Vedas, Upanishads, Vedanta, the oneness, but Vaishnav, this is just for degraded sentimentalists. So this is very vulnerable for him to share. No work of the Vaishnavas had any favor with us, but when we advanced in age and our religious sentiment received development, we turned out in a manner unitarian in our belief and prayed as Jesus prayed in the garden. Accidentally, we fell in with a work about the great Chaitanya, and on reading it with some attention in order to settle the historical position of that mighty genius of Nadia, we had the opportunity of gathering his explanations of Bhagavat, given to the wrangling Vedantist of the Benares school. So he's talking about Prakshananda. If you're not familiar with Chaitanya Charitamrita, you should be. Okay.
It's only 17 volumes.
What's that?
It's only 17 volumes.
Yeah. If we haven't read the 17 volumes, what are we doing with our life? Yeah, so in the Adi Lila, one of the early volumes, chapter 7, it's described Lord Chaitanya. He met with Prakshananda Sarasvati, who was a great scholar, sannyasi, impersonal Mayavad. And Lord Chaitanya, he was young at the time. He was like 24 years old, and he had taken sannyas. and so the Mayavad sannyasis, 60,000 of them, headed by Prakshananda Sarasvati, they saw that Lord Chaitanya was a sannyasi and he had an effulgence. He had an effulgence, but they saw that he was dancing in the street. Hari Bol, he was dancing and singing. And they go, look, as a sannyasi scholar, you should be studying. What are you dancing with fanatics? They would say, why are you dancing in the street with fanatics? So Lord Chaitanya met with him, and he very humbly said, well, my spiritual master, he said, I'm not like smart enough to understand the books. So I should just chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So I'm doing that, and then I find that it makes me mad with ecstasy. Maybe I'm insane, I don't know. And so they could see he was very humble. So they said, here, come join us. And then they had extensive talks about the Bhagavatam, about Vedanta Sutra. And Lord Chaitanya not just intellectually convinced them, but Lord Chaitanya, he transformed their hearts from kind of dry, stoic, hard-hearted impersonalist to soft-hearted, loving devotees of Krishna. He transformed 60,000 of them. So that's what Bhaktivinoda is referring to. Not just the emotional transformation, which was there too, but he transformed them because he met them where they're at. And he gave stronger logical arguments about the real meaning of the Vedas and Srimad Bhagavatam. His explanations of Bhagavat given to the wrangling Vedantist of the Benares school, that refers to Prakshananda Sarasvati, who was the leader of the 60,000. Even if you can find in libraries, I'm not recommending it, but you can find writings of Prakshananda Sarasvati. And after his meeting with Lord Chaitanya, you'll see the nature of his writings change. The accident, so Bhaktivinoda Thakura, I made a joke before about why didn't you just look up Chaitanya Charitamrita on the internet, purchase a copy, Amazon. So, but it really wasn't like easy to get. It really wasn't like, so he stumbled upon a copy, read it closely, and was like, oh. And then he, in his young adulthood, he was one of those intellectual Brahmoism who rejected anything Vaishnava. Said, oh, this is the real thing. This isn't the cheating form. The accidental study created in us a love for all the works which we find about our Eastern Savior. That's Lord Chaitanya. We gathered with difficulties the famous Karchas in Sanskrit written by the disciples of Chaitanya. The explanations that we got of the Bhagavat from these sources were of such a charming character that we procured a copy of the Bhagavat complete and studied its texts, difficult, of course, to those who are not trained up in philosophical thoughts. With the assistance of the famous commentaries of Sridhar Swami. From such study it is that we have at least gathered the real doctrines of the Vaishnavas. Oh, what a trouble to get rid of prejudices gathered in unripe years. I'll read that again. I mean, that's moving me personally. I got many prejudices from those ages, my late teens, early 20s, before I, delved into Prabhupada's books, and I'm definitely still struggling. And this is, you can relate, I'm still struggling to get rid of them. What a trouble to get rid of prejudices gathered in unripe years. So he's speaking of himself there. All right. So this is beautiful lecture and article, long article, like a small booklet. The Bhagavat, Its Philosophy, Ethics, and Theology by Kedranath Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna. Thanks for listening. Again, we could do days and days on Bhaktivinoda, and I got the material here to do it. We could hear from Bhaktivinoda directly, his bhajans. We can hear Prabhupada's talks about Bhaktivinoda. for now, I'll pause, and I welcome if anyone would like to share any comments, realizations, or questions at this time. Malini.
Hare Krishna, thank you. That's really reachable. And I was thinking at the beginning when you spoke about Bhaktivinoda Thakura in the middle of being subjugated by the English.
Yeah.
And then the end, connected the two, the end of where he sees all tendency for what's the word? The last sentence he said.
The Brahmoism?
Prejudice.
Oh, prejudice, yeah.
And, like in the same way also, I see even people who have practiced in Krishna consciousness for a long time.
Yeah.
People who are really absorbed in Krishna consciousness for many, many years.
Yeah.
And how we can still hear so much Taoism.
Yeah.
And our
true,
Taoism is so ingrained in
Yeah,
us
so ingrained,
because,
yeah.
such a tender age, it's kind of something that we have accepted for fact.
Yeah.
So similarly, I think like even so, we hear the Bhaktivinoda Thakura and his English and his way of speaking is so elevated.
Yeah.
Like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur,
Yeah.
there is a dialogue between him and a very early professor, with his pipe and everything. And at the beginning, he was really speaking with primitive.
Yeah, that's what that was. He thought the professor from
Of course.
from Ohio State.
Yeah, anyone who comes from Bangladesh or India or any country like that,
And he's speaking
they
on the
must be
Bhagavatam.
primitive.
Must be primitive, yeah.
And so he was coming from that place, and like within 2 or 3 questions, he
Yeah.
couldn't even follow.
He couldn't follow.
Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He couldn't even follow anything he was saying.
Yeah.
And so he had to admit defeat, but it took a long time.
Yeah.
But even so, it seems that kind of prejudice is so deeply ingrained.
Yeah.
Deeply ingrained. If we, as Western white people, we hear about Bangladesh, the first association with that is not a highly elevated philosopher. Even so, there is so much more philosophy in Bangladesh or India, even in the street, the street sweeper, than there is in most college-educated people in America.
Definitely true. Definitely true.
And I was just noticing how ingrained those things can be, and how it's hard, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, for him, but for us, I see for me, how all those things are so ingrained in our conditioning. We are so conditioned to not be able to see, any street sweeper in Bangladesh is going to give me deeper knowledge of the purpose of human life and of philosophical and input in my life than most UF professors like that. And so it's the same thing that you were saying, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur about, Ralph Emerson and Thoreau and all those people.
Yes.
Well, in comparison to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they are just kind of in infancy.
Yeah.
And they are in America, they're very rare. In the West, they are very rare.
Yes.
We know them because they are very rare. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to share, like the sense of India being subjugated by English people. So the English culture, literature, and everything being way superior than those primitive.
Yeah. And
then the primitive coming from highly sophisticated, not simply philosophy, but English and presentation and depth.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, it's about, I'm just inspired again to read that powerful sentence from Bhaktivinoda Thakur on which you expounded. And he puts an exclamation point there with emotion. Oh, what a trouble to get rid of prejudices gathered in unripe years.
Yeah. So much.
So much. So just, reinforcing what you're saying, Melanie, that like when the British first went to India, 1700s, British and first the British and Germans, French, like that. So then there was the first Sanskrit English dictionary, and then I think the name was Monier Williams. So he was asked, well, why even make a dictionary of such a primitive, unsophisticated, really low, degraded language? So he said his reason for doing that, and it's written, his reason for doing this is, well, we need to understand their language and their culture in order to destroy it. So what's it saying is like the whole thing, like the whole reason to study the Vedas and India and the whole culture, the language, is to destroy it and replace it with Western, particularly Western British Christian. Of course, if it was real Christian, but but Western British Christian, evolutionary Darwin, Freud. I mean, Freud came a little later, but to replace it with the real culture. There's statements. There's statements by, I think it's the same one who did that first dictionary, one of the first Indologists from the late 1700s, early 1800s, said something like, one small shelf of British literature is worth thousands of times more than all of the Vedas put together. So stuff like that. But there's heavier statements than that. So what it means is, like, anything we're getting from that, about the Vedas, like that, it's got that prejudice.
And we have
we have it in there, and it's very Darwinian. It's very Darwinian, and so then we can look, whether we look in mathematics, when we look in linguists, we look in anthropology, archaeology, we can look at philosophy, art, and so there's abundant evidence. The actual evidence is that the knowledge flows from east to west, but that evidence has been concealed and covered to make it seem that actually the knowledge went from west to east. Even there's writing from Alexander the Great. I remember I read this way back more than 30 years ago. I was doing a paper on ancient health systems, including Ayurveda, Islamic health system, the Greek health system, for one of my college courses, in a graduate course. So Alexander the Great, he's conquering all the lands, and then they come to the border of what at that time was Bharatavarsha, India, and he says to his assistants, he said, now we're going to the land of the Brahmins. Now we're going to the land of the most elevated knowledge in the whole cosmos. Like he knew, they knew. So there's lots to be said about that. Thank you for that, Molly. And so there's that, the meta, the social, and then personally, I know I'm coming up against it. Like
such a cheating.
Yeah, such a cheating.
Cheating propensity.
Yeah, cheating.
Yeah. Like the least educated and the lower are thinking they're the highest.
Yeah.
And whatever they got from the source, they got it.
Yeah.
To just deny it, not only deny it, but destroy it.
Yeah. So we like to make many points in this regard. We've done, not like we're scholar, but we've done a lot of reading. The books of Sadaputta have a lot about this thing. But we just look at that point about language. So now it's known that the most organized, structured, sophisticated language is Sanskrit. Is Sanskrit. And now, so that's it's clear, it's the mother language of all languages. But in linguistic study, they say, well, there was something before Sanskrit called Proto-Indo-European. The evidence for Proto-European there isn't any. There, I mean, based on everything, there isn't any, but just they just don't want to give it to Sanskrit. So then, if we look at the Darwinian theme of thought, okay, the evolution, right? The evolution. So the idea is that, so you got cavemen grunting, right? And then one day, boom, Sanskrit, the most sophisticated language. It's no, because now like modern day English, German, French, they're not as structured, they're not as complete, they're not as perfect, they're not as organized, they're not as rigorous as the more ancient languages. Even Hebrew and Latin are so much more rigorous and structured and logical than modern day languages, and Sanskrit even more than Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. Okay, so it would seem that if we look at language, things are devolving towards, to quote a band I used to listen to, towards monkeys in business suits. So, or even if we take just English, would we say the English of Shakespeare's time is so much more degraded compared to the English you'll get if you go into downtown Detroit or New York. It's just so much. No, I mean it's clear like the languages are, so the evidence points towards what the Vedas say, Kali Yuga, right? So Hare Krishna. Thank you, Malini, for your comments. I welcome other comments, sharing, questions.
Hare Krishna.
Anandini.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. It was, I want to hear more. That's what I'm experiencing. I want to hear more. It's so wonderful to hear. And also I'm feeling some, I don't know if it's despair or, like this. So it's not long ago, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it's not long ago that Lord Chaitanya was here. And in a sense, it's not long ago that Krishna was here. Yeah. And the degradation happened so fast.
Yeah.
Like, so from, just 500 years and so much gets lost and it will get worse and worse and worse. And I'm wondering, like where's the positive side? Like in this, the part of me thinks, oh, so how can I contribute to be a sweeper, in a small sense.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side, which feels like not disappointment, desolation, I don't know, something like that. Like, so what's the point if degradation just happens so quickly? So maybe you have some comment to that.
Well, I hear your apparently conflicting currents of emotion. You're feeling inspired. You want to hear more about Bhaktivinoda Thakur, from Bhaktivinoda. What a transcendentally amazing, inspiring personality. And then at the same time, you can see like, okay, there's Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, Bhaktivinoda, Srila Prabhupada, and even in the name of Prabhupada. So then that, seeing that how the degradation, how things get covered over, the genuine article gets covered over so quickly, then that can be discouraging and disheartening and move you to like, what's the point? What's the point? Yeah. Well, I hear you. I believe I share many of your sentiments. So, so we have an opportunity not to imitate Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but to to aspire to be like him, to be a stand for actual Krishna consciousness and not cheating pseudo forms of it. I'm reminded of a story, a parable I heard, like there was the tide on the ocean went in, and on the beach, there was just whatever, thousands and thousands of starfish. So two people are walking along. Maybe some of you have heard different versions. Two people are walking, so there's all these starfish on the beach, all in the process of dying. And so one person who's walking takes a starfish and throws it back into the ocean. And then the person next to him says, well, look, you got like 60,000 starfish here. What difference does it really make? What difference does it really make? So the other person said, well, for that one starfish, it makes a big difference. So we get to take a stand first for ourselves. I'm following Prabhupada as it is. And maybe in our whole lifetime, one person, maybe a family member, maybe someone who visits our house, maybe one, maybe 10, maybe one person's moved to also embrace Prabhupada's actual teachings and movement in the line of Bhaktivinoda. So a strong argument can be made. That's a life worth living. That's a life worth living. Of course, it might be more than, maybe that one influences 10,000. And even if no one's influenced, we live today in a way that pleases Bhaktivinoda Thakura. That's success. That's success. So those are some thoughts.
Okay. Anandini wanted to respond.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I have something I want to share, but I can share after Anandini share. I was thinking of the analogies that we spoke about in our last enlightenment program, like the Titanic.
Oh yeah, okay.
So my understanding is the Titanic, they had a very few boats, lifeboats, because it was unsinkable.
Right.
The boat was not sinkable, so who cares about having lifeboats? So they didn't have many lifeboats. And one could say like, okay, well, there's not enough for everyone, there is not many, who cares? But no, the ship was sinking, and then let's save as many people as can be saved. Even so, it was very, very few in comparison to. And also, even so, when they get on a lifeboat, they may die out of freezing, because it was in the Antarctic somewhere. But still the effort was given. So it's our effort, and then He gave us life to put the effort into respiritualizing the world, into giving Krishna consciousness to the world. And even so, things may be going down. Whatever soul we connect, when they will have a chance sometime, anytime. It doesn't mean to be in this world. They may not even come back here because of us. Because of us, they may not come back in this Kali Yuga. They may come back in different places, or closer to the 60s or the 50s, when things were not so degraded. So even so, they may not be touched in this lifetime or in this period of the lifetimes. And then there's the Golden Age rising. The Golden Age rising means that's going to be really, really hard materially. Golden Age rising, even I was reading Prabhupada again and again, he speak when Krishna is very pleased with a devotee, he takes everything away from the devotees. So his material life becomes completely miserable. So it's possible that for the Golden Age to rise, it's going to happen to everyone, that Krishna is going to take everything from everybody. to help them spiritually. So materially it's going down, but spiritually it doesn't have to be. Yeah. That's a few points.
Thanks for that, Malini. Thank you. Christy, do you have a comment?
And Nandini?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for both your responses. And I wanted to ask dear Govinda if you could read, no, maybe it could be later, maybe there's other comments or questions, if you could read this prayer again, where Bhaktivinoda Thakur says like something like, let my soul be in love and not in fear, something like that.
Yeah.
Could you read it again before we end?
Okay. I'll attempt to find it right now. Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay, here we go. Ready? And this is from the Bhagavad. It's Philosophy, Ethics, and Theology. So it's from that long lecture. The Bhagavad does not allow its followers to ask anything from God except eternal love towards Him. The kingdom of the world, the beauties of the local heavens, and the sovereignty over the material world are never the subjects of Vaishnava prayer. The Vaishnava meekly and humbly says, Father, Master, God, friend, and husband of my soul, I have called you my God. Let my soul be wrapped up in admiration at your greatness. I have addressed you as my master. Let my soul be strongly devoted to your service. I have called you my friend. Let my soul be in reverential love towards you and not in dread or fear. I have called you my husband. Let my spiritual nature be in internal union with you, forever loving and never dreading or feeling disgust. Father, let me have strength enough to go up to you as the consort of my soul, so that we may be one in eternal love. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. It's very beautiful and somehow unusual. Well, from what I know about Vaishnava prayers, I just know that from Lord Jesus to call God Father.
Mm. We feel a lot of Christian feel there. I would say yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Before we close, any closing comments or questions? Okay, so we'll close, and I think starting in a few minutes, Pramfra is going to organize a kirtan or something, and then we'll go again reading from Bhaktivinoda and about Bhaktivinoda, maybe from his bhajans, maybe more from his writings at 11 o'clock, 11 to 12, and then kirtan and prasad. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I'm coming soon.
Jai. See you soon. Hare Krishna.